Okay, welcome. We are live finally. Sorry for the delay, some technical difficulties. This is the Dynasty Saturday Night 5 on February 18th in the year of our Lord Greg Roman 2023. I apologize for the technical delay. Please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review if you're listening on the Going for Two Live podcast feed audio. If you're watching us here on YouTube, either live or later on, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Click the bell, click a little thumbs up on the video, show us some love. I'm Brian Ford, and tonight subbing for Josh Walker is the one and only Manitoba Menace, Thomas Tipple. How you doing?
Man, Manitoba Menace might even have been a better wrestling name than the one I came up with. Jeez Louise. Manitoba Menace sounds better than David London does. Oh my God. Oh my
so,
God.
Well, you're gonna have to revive your career now.
Oh no. Body said no. I'm done. Don't give people any ideas. It's not happening. Nope. I'm out. Oh, but what up? Going for two. You've probably seen me raid the chat every time somebody brings up running back. That's me. So
Or a trade.
Hey, trade's fine, but it's it's the running backs. We no bueno those guys.
Yeah. So for folks maybe who are less familiar with you, why don't you tell us just a little bit about where we can find you, your work, plugs, Twitter handles, all that jazz.
Everywhere.
Okay.
Joshua. Yeah, man. It's everywhere. But there's a little you've obviously going for two stuff. I try to be in my channel as much as possible, dropping ranks and data and whatever as I'm kind of doing my research. Full Tilt at Dynasty Tilt, Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast Network is ever growing. And then now you can find my work through the fantasypoints.com medias, either on the websites, the Twitter, and the YouTubes, as I've been putting in my time getting that up to speed. So you can find it everywhere, man. There's nowhere we're not at this point.
Ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Well, folks, for those of you who might forget or are watching for the first time, Dynasty Saturday Night 5, it's a fun little thing we do on Saturday nights. We come up with lists of 5 as a way to talk about Dynasty fantasy football. Tonight, we're going to do a little bit of a different twist. We're going to talk about Dynasty wide receiver buys. Doesn't sound too different, but we're going to base off some work Tom's done already. And before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about what makes someone a buy in Dynasty. Are you is the baseline value you're using at this time of the year pretty much the startup ADP, and then you kind of go from there? This guy's going too high, this guy's going too low. How do you identify a buy?
So a buy for me specifically, it goes by more than just ADP. As you know, I like to have my head in the data spreadsheets as much as I can. And it's kind of a combination of, I really love looking at somebody's warp. I really love seeing that's wins over replacement, or I really like expected fantasy points, or the expected fantasy points differential. That really helps you identify. It's why one of the players we're going to talk about, Deontay Johnson, is such a screaming one for me, because we can identify what's his ADP. Okay, you look at most places. If you could use the Bulletproof Prospect ADP, right? He's 33. If you use DLF, he's wide receiver 30. So we know he's a wide receiver 3. We also know that he performed under expected fantasy points differential more than any other player in the league. That says buy. That says player is good, weird things happened, and the market agrees that he's low, which means to me, we go and get it. So I'm constantly checking the market. I'm not a stick my nose up to different I'll look at every ranking. I'll look at every site, whether it's Keep Trade Cut, Dynasty Trade Calculator, Fantasy Pros, Fantasy Points, you name it. I'm going to look it up. Same with Bulletproof. I like to take all those data points and really kind of generalize those middle rounds, because that to me is, for the most part, where all that value is going to come from. So when identifying one, it's kind of always checking the market to kind of looking at their more important statistics, not their finishes, not even their points per game. All those minor details is what I want to look at, and then I go and attack where the market has them, and then I'm just picking on players that I'm obviously higher on than the market, that I can get at below where I have them.
Right on. Okay, so in that sense, then we're talking about perhaps maybe what you might call like a sneakier buy, like buys that aren't everyone tweeting like this guy's a buy, this guy's a buy, because when they are, then who's really selling and what's the price going to be, right?
I do hate that. So, one of the things I try to avoid in the Full Tilt Discord channel and even in the Going for Two Discord channel is just arbitrarily saying, just buy this player. We get it. Buy Kyle Pitts. Like, we get it. But if everyone on the universe is screaming, sell Derrick Henry right now, then you're probably not going to get to sell Derrick Henry. That's not actionable. You're not doing anything. You're just regurgitating groupthink, and it's not going to actually help you gain an advantage. So let's just use Derrick Henry as an example right now. I'm not an RB guy, but you know what I'm doing? I'm buying Derrick Henry. You know why? Because everyone else is saying to sell him, which means there's a market to buy. And then there's obviously a market of his cost. So if everyone's telling you to sell on a player who's already below market cost, then you're just inviting me to go and offer right now. You can, in most leagues, and I get it, in my league, I'd never go down. We get it. Okay. That means this statement's not for you. But in a league, you can go and trade an early second, the same piece that's getting moved for Algier. You can go and add minimal to that and just go grab Derrick Henry. Why wouldn't you do that if you're already, obviously, if you're trying to acquire Derrick Henry, you think you're one of those top 3 teams. You're just Tyler Algier or Derrick Henry. Well, Derrick Henry's Algier without needing to panic about the draft.
Yeah.
Right now. Anyway, I mean, they draft Bijan and the world's going to end, and I just screwed up everything, but
nobody's safe.
Exactly. Everyone's drafting Bijan. We're cloning him. That's how it's going to work. But that's how you can identify in your market to micro market to everyone group thinking on buy or sell. You can use that to identify an actual buy if your eyes are permanently locked on the market. And in my opinion, everyone should be doing that all the time.
Right on. And if there's anything that you're going to get from listening to Tom tonight, folks, it's that hustle that I personally admit I don't have. And so I shouldn't have the 32 leagues that I do.
Hey, you know what? No, I want to comment on that because
yeah.
So to say that like, oh, you have to like grind and just fire out every trade offer, make 600 waiver claims. You don't even have to do that. All you have to do, if you're someone that just doesn't feel like you have, like you said, that like really in it 40 hours a week type stuff in your leagues, let alone on top of all your work you're doing in life and whatever, just talk. If you just keep dropping messages once in a while and identifying you have 33 leagues, what teams are contenders, what teams are buyers, what teams are not, have a spreadsheet. Yeah. Have it marked where you're like buyer, seller, good, dog water, whatever. And then all you have to do is just keep communicating in your league. That's half of your hustle. If people in your league see that you're active, you're doing half of the work already because you're already doing the market work behind the scenes. So it really cuts out half the hustle. Yeah, I don't do that. Yeah. I don't do that. I don't send a bunch of messages in leagues. I drop gifts and get out. Like that's it. Cause I just do it in a different process, but you definitely could not only add more leagues, but be doing that hustle work without actually grinding your nose to the stone, or as you know, boomers would say, pounding the pavement. You don't actually have to do that. That's a myth. As long as you're semi-active in your chat, you're doing half the work for you. Chances are someone's coming you for a trade offer, sends the guy that hasn't said anything in 3 weeks. So it's kind of just a different methodology in staying that active.
I hear you. I got you. That's probably something I can do. You'll be proud of me. I already have a spreadsheet with all my leagues to begin with.
Let's
I just need to add a page at the bottom for this who's a buyer, who's a seller.
You don't even have to do that. You just column, just add a column beside it, and you're good to go. And then if you want to get crazy, something that I do on my spreadsheet on those teams that are buyers, sellers, I put my highest price pieces
Yeah.
And then I put them in category of willing to move, keep, etc. And then you can stack up your leagues to know exactly what you're working with all the time.
It's kind of like
I'm a lunatic.
Yeah, you are. But like, I think the point you're making though is kind of like what I've been spending like hella time with the rookies, right? So my idea is that like I'm gonna have all the foundational work done. So then just the adjustments are minor here and there. So what you're saying is put in some work on that spreadsheet, and then the hustle in the leagues you have to do day to day is gonna be less. Yeah.
Minimal. I can't imagine playing fantasy football now without having that access. Like I'm in 73 dynasties, and we have one going to kick off in 40 minutes that we're both in. We're doing what's called a psycho draft with all the rookies in it already. I cannot wait. Yeah. I've only done like 3 of these ever. I'm so excited to watch the chaos ensue that I want to just sit back. I probably not making many moves. I just want to see it happen, but I can't imagine being in 73 leagues and then not keeping that close to track, because then someone's going to slip through the cracks. A team that you've had, Bateman on last year that you could have moved for a second when your team's definitely going to finish 8th. Okay, well, now you've lost out on that opportunity and it slipped through the cracks. And it's that you need to, in my opinion, have that that spreadsheet, that word sheet, however you have to do it, that system in place. I know a lot of people do it by like the name of their teams in leagues, which I find interesting. They'll like change their name. They'll be like $50 buy-in good. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's an interesting way to do it too. But I mean, spreadsheet's pretty copy and paste. So figure it out maybe. I don't know.
Last year I was my team names were no, maybe, probably not. And that was like the answer of, am I going to compete this year? And like, yeah. All right. So before we move into the buys, let's pay the bills. Today's show is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has it all. Industry leading best ball tournaments, leagues, private leagues, pick'ems. They're not just football. If you want to scratch that itch in the off season, you can do some stuff with all the major sports. And of course, best ball draft season is coming up for the Dynasty Best Ball Freaks now anyway. So sign up with your promo code GF2 and you'll get a deposit match of up to $100. It's as simple as that. Sign up, use the code GF2, start playing, start winning. We love you, Underdog. We love you, Tom. Tom already did some work on this, dropped a video on YouTube about these 5 Dynasty wide receiver buys. Where can folks find that video?
So again, everything Full Tilt is really easy to find. If you type Full Tilt Dynasty anywhere, Google, YouTube, Twitter, we're going to pop up. That's where you can find that video. Again, these 5 wide receivers, I do go over it. I'm bringing some different heat to this show because I'm not a copy and paste guy with contents. Don't worry, there's going to be new stuff here, but you can go and check that out. It's the first time Full Tilt's really done that kind of content. I usually keep everything on a show base, like show-to-show basis, but Full Tilt, we're taking a break. That's why I got this time now to hop on with you and do some other shows. I'm doing another one tomorrow with the JYB fam. And we're on a 3-week break. The Walkabout's on a bit of a break as we deal with timing. So I felt like maybe now this is the time to get a little more extra content. So that's where this idea for 5 wide receivers to buy in. Also, I just want to address Josh Walker, the comment, I want in on the next psycho draft. Well, guess what? If you go to my profile or at Dynasty Tilt on the profile, or even the Full Tilt Dynasty YouTube channel, the link to the Discord, which is free, is in the description. You hop in there, and I post all the time when a new Full Tilt league is ready to go. We've already started 4 Dynasty leagues this year. Pretty exciting stuff. So you can go and do that, Josh. Shout out to you.
All right. So please, why don't we get going? We got your 5 here. Who do you want to talk about first?
Well, I think we should do it in order of the players that I did the videos. We'll start with number 5 because this is the Saturday Night 5. Shout out to Booker T, the 5-time WCW champion. We'll start with number 5. I mean, why not? Let's start with Donovan Peoples-Jones. Obviously, this is a player that everyone was super hot about last year. Everyone wanted to get their hands on DPJ, and it might at the surface not have worked out, but he was pretty good. He was a wide receiver 3 almost the entire year with weeks of finishing at 13 and 14. That's high wide receiver 2. He's got He Who Shan't Be Named coming back for the second year. You can't be that putrid. He's got to at least be Brissettian in how he plays football next year, I would assume. So, no, my number 5 buy for me is definitely Donovan Peoples-Jones. And some of it, people are probably a little bit sick of him because he was such a hype machine last year because we only want the year 2 guys, right? But he was better than people want to actually look into. But he was quite good. He was a wide receiver 3 in 10 of his weeks played. That's usable.
You know what I found really interesting? Not that this makes him not a buy or not, but his home road splits were like the complete mirror opposite of Amari Cooper there for much of the season, which was kind of an oddity. So according to KTC, they have him roughly equal to a 25 early second. You giving that up for DPJ?
No, because I don't think you actually have to. So one of the things with, and in the video I stated for the other player, one of the other players on this list, is that I'd be happy to pay that. Like, I'd be happy to play that medium 2 to that late-ish 2, and then even into a 3. But again, you're not going to have to pay that. We're talking players like Derrick Henry going for those second-round picks. There's no world where Peoples-Jones is going to go for that pick. So when you're looking at a site like Keep Trade Cut, there are instances where those quote unquote those market values don't line up, but your micro market in a league per league basis will give you the opportunity to buy at that low.
Jamie checking in, fellow Jerome Ford fan.
We are talking one of your guys here, Jamie, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. I mean, we're talking it up.
So he's going right now on DLF ADP as wide receiver 47.
Right.
I mean, I rank by tiers, but like he's 49 in my rankings between Gallup and Tony. Am I crazy to have Gallup a slot ahead of him?
I mean, I say the same thing on every Full Tilt pod where we talk about these late wide receivers. There's 632,421 of them. It's which ones can you get that might be able to produce, and DPJ against those other guys. Again, 10 weeks of wide receiver 3 or above production from this guy on an iffy offense, making serious changes. That is worth something to me. Now, again, if you're buying at this stage of the offseason, you must be aware of the risk or the possibility that they bring another player in. But we don't worry about that on these players that are this cheap. That's why, to answer your question, I'm not comfortable sending that early too.
Yeah.
However, micro market will likely dictate what you do or don't do. But if you can get Peoples-Jones in as that third piece where you want to do a 1 for 2, but the guy doesn't want to give up too much, you can probably work Peoples-Jones in there for sending back maybe an early 3 or a mid 3, in which case, yes, absolutely smash that, because maybe he hits, maybe he doesn't. But again, if you're obviously this isn't like a start 9 conversation. That's very important. Your format will definitely change whether these players are a buy or not. If you're in a start 9, then Peoples-Jones means nothing. But in a start 10, start 11, now that's when you get into really needing that type of wide receiver 3 plug in and play when you need to. So it's kind of my summary.
Next guy on the list is somebody I actually just traded for tonight. Why don't you tell us about your next wide receiver buy?
Okay, number 4 was a favorite of Jacob Sanderson of the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast. It's Wan'Dale Wario Robinson. And you talk about having high risk tolerance. This is that play, because he flashed a little bit. Like, you kind of already had to be a believer in Wan'Dale, but he did have 2 of the 6 games he really got to play a high snap percentage and get targets on over 13 fantasy points on those 2 out of 6 games. And of course, obviously he got hurt during the big one, because we can't have nice things in fantasy football. Like, when it actually looked like he was really going to break out, using him in the slot, they were designing him out of the backfield. His target percentage was going up, his targets per route run, his yards per route run, everything was looking up. And then of course the brutal injury. I'm not worried about the injury. People are like, well, he's small, it's a durability problem. big dudes blow their ACLs out too. We're going to have concerns about Breece Hall's knee? Probably not. So I don't think ACLs are as big of a deal as they used to be, especially for these young super athletes. Like these guys are mega athletes. This isn't Jim from accounting, blowing his knee out, taking the mail. This is a super athlete. So I don't think it's going to be as bad. And I'm a firm believer, again, at wide receiver 49 at DLF.
Yeah.
Is the cheapest year 2 wide receiver that was productive that there is.
Yeah, no, this is somebody I'm higher than the market on. I got him at 40, and every other ranking I'm looking at here, whether it's the GF2 composite, KTC, DLF, ADP, is all below that. KTC says he's worth around a 24 mid-second or the equivalent thereof. Is that closer than the DPJ price was?
I'd be looking to pay that price for sure. But again, you're probably not going to have to. You could probably get a third added onto that for that 24 too. It's also one of those situations where the team trying to trade away Wandale trade away Wandale is probably not just looking to get a future too. So it's one of those situations where that trade wouldn't fit. But I did do a deal earlier in the offseason that involved Amari Cooper and Wandale, and then a pick, and then it was, I was offloading a veteran receiver. So I got Wandale, a second and a third, and I took that happily. So he's just one of those players that you're able to kind of move around your negotiation window.
Okay. Roast my trade real quick. So I sent you in the DMs. I'm in a rebuild. Usual Superflex, 12-team, all that jazz. I sent Dak and Claypool for the 103, a 24-second, which is maybe mid, and Wandale. The guy really likes Wandale. He didn't want to part with him. He changed my Cade Otton to Claypool, which I kind of was okay with, actually. You said like, not love it. So I don't really love a lot of the trades I make, unfortunately. It's like if both people are pissed off, it's a good trade. But what do you think about that?
The changing Cade Otton. Why are we wanting Cade Otton on your roster? I mean, I think Cade Otton and Claypool are both awful and irrelevant. So
no Cade Otton slander on this podcast.
Oh, he's gonna be awful. I have news for you. Don't bother. Wow. Yeah. Just draft whatever rookie tight ends in the third and just hope and pray, because it's not going to happen with it. It didn't happen with Otton with Brady. I don't think it's really going to happen without him personally.
See, I was glass half full on what did happen. I have him as one of the 7 or 8 rookie 22 tight ends that kind of flashed and we're optimistic about. But
I'm less optimistic.
Okay. But the trade, what do you think?
Right. So my only issue with the deal being 103 at 24-2 and Wandale is that Dak is going like in the back end first round in startups to early 2. So whereas the 103, if I were to go to the bulletproof prospect rolling ADP, 103 is moving in the early third, kind of in that 302. So if I were to approach this, I'm looking at going, well, okay, Dak right now, if I use that as QB 11, I'm giving up near a full round of startup value. The seconds are great. The second is great, and Wandale, fantastic. Don't know if that's enough for the high move up. Right. Yeah. However, in terms of your team specific, if that was the best, quote unquote, best deal that was kind of available to you in that sense to get the job done that you were looking to have get done, then I think that's fine within your own market. It just, for me, I would be trying to probably attack for a little bit more, but in that case, it's like, what else are you going to get? A third? What do you really? So at that point, I don't force it. I just get the deal done. But I don't mind this at all. 103, got 2 good young quarterbacks, maybe even use that 103, package it up to get one of the top 10, one of the top 8. Right. I mean, very doable. I don't mind it.
In that league, I'm sitting on Lance, the 103 and the 104, just off the top of my head. So
phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah. All right, your next wide receiver, somebody who I have ranked exactly at their DLF ADP, and I want a reason to go higher. Tell me about touchdown regression or expected fantasy points or something here.
So number 3 is Deontay Johnson. And I know even in the video I said it's going to sound weird, but hear me out. And I need everyone here to hear me out. Deontay Johnson scored just over 10 fantasy points per game, which is very Donovan Peoples-Jones of him. And look, it wasn't as bad as you think. As I mentioned, there was no player that suffered a worse expected fantasy points differential than Deontay Johnson. Literally in the league of wide receivers that played 15 games and had relevant snaps, all that jazz, his minus 4.8 expected fantasy points per game differential was the worst. What's batshit crazy is in a year that they went from Trubisky to god-awful Kenny Pickett, back to Trubisky, back to Pickett, and everyone thinks that George Pickens is him. He's the second coming himself, which I don't see. This elite target earner somehow didn't score a touchdown on the year, and his 15.5 expected fantasy points per game would have been 13th in the league, according to fantasypoints.com, which is where I got this data from.
I was going to ask if you where you're getting WARP and expected fantasy points from for people who want to look for it.
So WARP I get from the Bulletproof Prospect Discord and their site. It's phenomenal. You can go check that out. That is a paid service. I know other people get it from elsewhere, but that's just where I'm already subscribed to, so that's where I get it. But expected fantasy points and things like that, I just go right to fantasypoints.com. They are focusing hard on their data section, and their subscription is more than 100% worth it. Definitely one of the better and more data focused fantasy sites out there. But again, 15.5 expected fantasy points per game, not bad. For a wide receiver, 30. That is in back-to-back years, elite target earner, his high expected fantasy points. I mean, he's got his contract. The offensive coordinator is coming back. Yes, there's rumors he might get traded, but until it happens, I don't really take that into account. And even if he gets traded, we know he's a target earner. Targets are one of the stickiest stats in fantasy.
I was going to ask you what you make of like the specter of Matt Canada still hanging over the offense. Some people seem to be optimistic that they're going to like get in somebody who's going to help with the play calling, and it's going to be like a little more creative. I don't know if you saw Freiermuth's quote about like not even having hot reads and things like that, but do you think that there's reason to think that the offense will improve at all or get a little more creative? Or
so when I look at my fantasy players, I never account for rational coaching decisions.
Right.
It's never, because it's not quantifiable. Like I can't sit here and be like, well, you know what? Greg Roman's at 3rd and 15. There's no way he runs a fullback screen again. And then he runs a fullback screen again. They need to win the game. There's no way they throw a Hail Mary to Patrick Ricard to end the game. And guess what? That's what happens. So after the years of taking a beating as a Ravens fan, it's one of the reasons I just don't put rational coaching decisions into my analysis. So whether Matt Canada wants to design a hot read or not, what matters to me is Deontay Johnson playing in the slot, which means Deontay Johnson's more often than not the hot read.
Right.
So until there's signs of that changing, no, I'm not particularly worried. I'm not particularly worried about anyone else, taking those routes from him. More targets for Freiermuth would be great, but just 125 from Deontay Johnson for targets, I'm pretty much locking that down in the bag.
Josh commiserating with poor coaching decisions as a Falcons fan here in the chat. He is.
Yeah, I can't even. You guys, man, if you guys end up with Lamar Jackson and get the same piss poor results, I'm gonna be so sorry, man. But I'll say this, Josh, I'm gonna become a Falcons fan if the Ravens move on from Jackson. That'll be the last straw I have with that organization. I'll tell you that much.
I would do the same if I was a Ravens fan. Real quick, what are you looking to? I mean, in a vacuum, I know. Roughly, what are you looking to send equivalent thereof if for Deontay Johnson?
Well, I actually think one of the trades you made was the best example of how to acquire Deontay Johnson in a league. I mean, I'm going back. You'll have to excuse me. In our Discord, there's a ton of trades posted that I actually have to go through. Here we are. So you actually traded away Jahan Dotson, a 201, a 25 fourth, and 23 309, which is nothing to me. And you walked away with 20 fab, which I think is hilarious. I always love the fab being added. I think that's so
Wasn't
great.
my idea, but I'll take it.
It's absolutely hilarious and can actually really come through in the clutch. Yeah. But then you ended up with 209 and 111. So you're getting a first round pick boost from a fourth pick, a third, and you move up 2 spots from the second round to into the first round, and you move up a full round for a second round pick for a fourth. It's just like, that's such easy money to me. And then it's really just Diontae Johnson and Jahan Dotson. And I'm sorry to everyone that really loves Jahan Dotson. He's not him. His rookie season is definitely propped up by touchdowns. I understand they just hired Eric Bieniemy. That's nice. Eric Bieniemy has this thing with using multiple weapons. And again, we do not account for rational coaching decisions. What I want is the data. And to me, Diontae Johnson is more than replaceable with the years of information we have with Diontae Johnson.
Yeah, so, I have them in the same tier. Like I have Dotson a couple ticks ahead of Johnson for what it's worth, but close enough that, like, I essentially, as I told you, boiled that trade down to I sent the 309 for the 209. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's what I mean. That's the perfect type of move for me. Now, again, I'm obviously paying those mid and early seconds for this type of wide receiver because I just don't think you're going to find this wide receiver with his production and his history. If he's wide receiver 13, like if his expected fantasy points hit, which I know, well, if all of them hit, then they'd all be better. Sure, but they wouldn't have been wide receiver 13, which is my point. So even if you take somebody's expected fantasy points differential and be like, well, everyone would have been better. Everyone wouldn't have been better than Diontae Johnson. He is a good wide receiver, just flat out, and you're getting him at wide receiver 3 prices. It's absolutely insane. And Josh, I hope you're not saying blasphemy to the fact that Jahan Dotson was boosted by 7 receiving touchdowns on 35 receptions.
I believe that's what he's referring to. We do like Dotson here, yeah.
10.9 points per game with 7 touchdowns. He's worse Chase Claypool from his rookie season. Seriously. Really,
Josh is doubling down. He is him.
Okay, Josh, I'm going to remember that, but I respectfully regret to inform you that he is okay, but not him.
Okay. So your next receiver is somebody who I've seen be pretty divisive as far as, value and buy, sell. And I've seen some folks say, actually, now's the buy because he's going to have a weird year with the quarterback missing, and then the value is going to tick up next year, et cetera, et cetera. So tell me about wide receiver 2 on the list.
Wide receiver 2, and I got to tell you, I'm not much of a fantasy writer, but the first couple articles I've written was about Marquise Hollywood Brown. You can find them at fantasyintervention.com. They're still there. I went in detail. This is a guy who has multiple stretches in his career of being not just a good wide receiver, a top 8 wide receiver. In I believe it was 2020, he was top 8 for the first 8 or 9 games. In 2021, he had another stretch again where he was in that top 10 for the first half of the season, always correlating with Lamar Jackson being injured. And he has to deal with Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley at quarterback and Josh Johnson the year after. So he's always, the last 3 years, seemed to have run into like really bad luck in that regard. Last year, he loses Kyler Murray after a blazing hot start again, and then comes back and then hurts his other foot. So he is risky, but we're talking about a player who's going at wide receiver 24 at DLF that earns targets, is an explosive player, and can win you weeks. Like, he's shown he can win you weeks. Now, in regards to, it's going to be weird, for him with the quarterbacks. Well, with bad quarterback play and DeAndre Hopkins returning, this is still a player that averaged 8 targets per game. So even with Colt McCoy and Hopkins being around, he still earned targets. Now, if Hopkins gets shipped out in that role, he was looking at 11 plus targets per game. You're at a wide receiver 24. This is the same thing with Deontay Johnson. This is a guy who is earning and is a actual known producer. And we are going to get Kyler Murray back eventually. He is just a player that is, for stretches, a wide receiver one, just has not been able to put it together, for better or for worse. We look at DJ Moore, and it's always DJ Moore is going to break out. He's going to break out. It's coming. DJ Moore is coming. Marquise Brown over his career has had better stretches than DJ Moore in terms of an actual breakout. And he's, again, cheaper. So every year I feel like I'm sitting here talking about how cheap Marquise Hollywood Brown is and that he shouldn't be. And this year, yeah, it might be true. All right, it's going to be rough. You're going to have to stomach it. 25-year-old wide receiver with round one draft capital, proven to be successful as a number one receiver. He was the most unique red zone wide receiver one in NFL history with the Ravens, his red zone targets in his time there for what his size is, and he produced. He can do it at all levels. So also, Cliff Kingsbury is yeeted into the sun finally, often what, Thailand? So maybe we'll get a better offense instead of the 3 route tree from his receivers.
Had somebody tell me their view on Hollywood is he's a wide receiver who's about to turn 26, and I'm not going to bank on any higher production 27 and onwards. So not a guy I care much about.
But so my issue with that is why? I mean, we're talking about 107 targets in 12 games last year, 145 targets in one of the most run-heavy offenses in 2021, and 100 targets again in one of the most run-heavy offenses in 2020. That's 3 straight years of 100-plus targets. We're talking about big air yards. We're talking about decent touchdowns. He's had over 55 receptions. Even in his injured rookie year, he had 46 receptions. That's really freaking good. But again, we can just look back at some of the stretches that he's had. It's just truly been an unbelievable wide receiver 17, 7, then 58, then 13, then 3. We had 10, 5. We just have weeks where he can absolutely blow up, and that's hard to find. Who else are you going to take at wide receiver 24? That has that same level of production opportunity. I just don't. And we're looking at potentially a wide receiver 1. Again, Hopkins could go out. Who's going to be the wide receiver? Rondale? All right. Greg Dortch? Okay. Well, Ertz, he's on the shelf. He's probably not coming back this year at all. So, yeah, they can bring somebody in. We're looking at one of the worst cap space situations in the NFL. We're talking about one of the worst built rosters in the NFL. We're talking about a team that has almost no wiggle room in how they can build. They're tied into a quarterback. He's going to be hurt. What are they adding that's a threat? Are they going to draft a wide receiver in the first round? Probably not. It would make no sense with that offensive line and how we don't know what a new coach is going to do. He's a defensive coach. A lot of work to be done. Leaving Marquise Brown is kind of the last man standing. Yeah. I just can't possibly understand how an explosive young wide receiver is regarded as not possible on getting better. He's just good, period.
Right on. And going 2 spots lower on DLF ADP is your wide receiver 1. This is a guy who, by the way, if my friend Jesse is listening, I said this is a guy, so you have to drink. Before I'm lower on him than a lot of people are, right? And I'm 10 spots higher than DLF ADP. Before we talk about your number 1 wide receiver, the people need to know. There was a cameo appearance by your kitty in the background before.
Oh, yes.
What's kitty's name?
That one we just call Foo.
Okay.
FOO. His actual name is Watson, but we never call him that. Yeah. Okay. He's a purebred ragdoll.
Right on.
Yeah.
So tell me about we go from kitty 1 to wide receiver 1. Who's the top buy for you?
I've actually done 2 videos about this player this offseason. We talked about him on the Full Tilt, and we did a video, a little section about, is he a wide receiver 1 at wide receiver 2 prices? And it's yes, it's Cooper Kupp. I don't know what I understand. We have aegis and people who hate fantasy points when they play fantasy football, but this is egregious. This is bad. Cooper Kupp had the best opening 5-week stretch of any other player in the league. There was no wide receiver, not Justin Jefferson, not Devontae Adams, none of them. Nobody, not Jamar Chase. Nobody had a better start to their season than Cooper Kupp. And this is with an injured Matthew Stafford. The breakfast buddies were taken right where they left off in the year prior. Obviously, he wasn't like Jerry Rice good in that time because, I mean, let's be real, but his WARP was 0.06. His targets per game was at 10.6. His receptions per game in 2021 was actually 11.1. His pace, not that far off in 2022 at 8.5. He had the second best yards per game in his entire career at 91. He's old. I don't care. He's not old. He's 30. He's not like the big body AJ Green. He's a slot receiver. Slot receivers get a bad rap in fantasy. They shouldn't. They definitely shouldn't. They should be targeted in fantasy. They should be highlighted. Like his 19.4 expected fantasy points per game. That's not slowing down. That's second best probably in his career. I'd have to double and fact check that. I didn't have that written down, but we're talking about a guy going at wide receiver 26. That's top 5, top 4 weekly. Stafford's coming back. McVay's coming back. That offensive line was terrible. Can't get much worse. I'd like to hear just somebody explain to me why Cooper Kupp shouldn't be bought at wide receiver 26. There's no reason for me.
I'll tell you what people say about him just in general, maybe not necessarily at the cost of because I think at wide receiver 26, a lot of people would be in, I would hope. But not only is it the age thing, but it's Stafford is declining. It is the offensive line. It is that the Rams are that dynasty manager in your league who went all in for the championship. Now they're left with nothing and they're leaving, and they can't really add much. I mean, that's kind of what people are putting together, is that you cannot expect Kupp to maintain in 2023 the pace he was on in 2022 before he got hurt.
But I just, to them, I would still say why. All of those scenarios were there last year. And they brought in Allen Robinson, or the ghost of Allen Robinson. And they nothing's changed for them. The offensive line still dog water. The defense still going to be good. They're still going to be looking to compete in this division next year. Nothing has changed for me. Yeah, Stafford's declining. That's fine. Stafford can decline as long as he knows how to target that one guy. What are we worried about here? I mean, I think Cooper Kupp would have been fine with Baker Mayfield. Because Ben Skoranek was playable. Oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. Little short guy.
Tutu Atwell?
That's the one. Was fantasy viable. I was using him in the playoffs with Baker Mayfield. You're telling me Cooper Kupp wouldn't have been him? He wouldn't have been that guy. Wide receiver 2, wide receiver 5, 22, 3, 5, 15, 8, 3. And then he got hurt.
Yeah. What
are we talking about?
Well,
the whole offseason is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. We're going to go through the same shit with the 2023 offseason we did 2022. They're going to be the same. It's driving me. It's sending me to another country at this point. Like my soul and my body are in two different places. I don't understand it.
Which one is in Canada?
Definitely
the soul or the body?
Nah, my body, because I'm freezing my butt off over here. My soul is definitely in like Puerto Rico or something. But we're talking about like, okay, you can get Justin Jefferson, offensive player of the year, really good player. Okay, you're getting Justin Jefferson at wide receiver 26. You're just smashing that, right? What are we taking away? The age? Okay, draft Justin Jefferson in the first round and then go get Cooper Kupp as your wide receiver 3. Like what? Like I don't. You want to win championships like these? Like you want one? Okay, don't let top 3 wide receivers fall to be a wide receiver 2 or 3 on a team. It's asinine. If we want to go, what rookie picks I'm sending? 108, 109, 110, 111, 112. Sure, plus on top of that, yeah, absolutely. Because guess what?
Wow,
Chances
okay.
are on market, you're getting something back with an actual league winner. This is an actual league winner. What's crazy to me, Brian, is that people are treating him like he tore both ACLs and broke both ankles. He twisted his ankle. Like
I would
twice.
have to say, like, if I was in a startup, I'm not taking him at wide receiver 26. I would. That's a big value, right? Like, I probably would have taken him before that, but I also am probably not taking him at where he quote unquote should be, because I would trade for him at wide receiver 26 value. But if I'm in the startup, I'm probably trying to avoid him unless he is like a super great value. Because I'm trying to set myself up for a few years in a row, and I don't bank on being able to flip him the way that some people do. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Sure. What's
too conservative?
I mean, no, not at all, because you build your teams on how you're comfortable. Yeah. So a startup is a completely different animal when it comes to how you build your rosters. We've done enough startups a couple of times. You know what I like to do? I'm going to trade up at all costs. I'm going to get 2 quarterbacks that I feel are in the top 10. And then after that, if that means I have to not draft in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm going to move back up to go and get Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews. I've done that in leagues with you. Or I'm going to go and get those 2 quarterbacks and Pitts and Andrews. And sometimes you have to give up, your rounds 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm comfortable doing that because people keep letting guys like Deontay Johnson fall down the draft board, and Keenan Allen and Calvin Ridley and Amari Cooper just constantly. And I'm looking at a draft board, so wondering where my eyes are going. That's where my eyes are going. Is a draft board I have pulled up from the Bulletproof Discord, and it, an ADP of all these players. And yeah, I can go and get Deontay Johnson as my wide receiver 2 if I do want to trade out in that aspect. So I think the team building is different. Like if you're in a league that said you're not allowed to trade out, you're just not allowed to trade. Okay, well, I can go quarterback, tight end, and then guess what? If I pick early enough in the 4th round, Cooper Kupp is still my wide receiver 1. You're telling me that there's a possibility where I walk away with like a Trevor Lawrence, a Dak Prescott, Mark Andrews, Cooper Kupp? Game over, man. You're telling me that I can end up having Travis Kelce in that 3rd round, who's going 304 according to this, as the tight end 2. And then if I net Kelce there, then yes, Cooper Kupp is going to be that pick for me in that 4th, not, DK Metcalf, who's going before him. Devonta Smith is only going a couple of spots after Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Like, Devonta Smith is a good player. He's not the wide receiver 1 type guy, in my opinion. And by points per game, according to Player Profiler, Cooper Kupp still was, in 9 games played, the number 1 fantasy points receiver at points per game, 22.4. I said that really weird, but you get my point.
Yeah.
We're talking about
I didn't know that.
Yeah, 25.9 fantasy points per game in 2021, the phenomenal season, with only 6 touchdowns. We're talking about a guy who still had 22.4 points per game in 9 games. 812 yards, 75 receptions. Like, he was still unguardable. You could not guard him. And if not for McVay using him as a blocker in a game that was blown out, we're talking about a guy. Also, if Warford didn't throw just an awful pass, and again, Cooper Kupp twisted his ankle like I do in the grocery store, then his season would have continued. And I bet you, I'm willing to put my mortgage on it, if it were possible, that if the Rams didn't suck, if Stafford didn't get shut down, if they weren't completely out of contention and resting Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, we would have seen Cooper Kupp come back. I bet you, even if Stafford was healthy, we would have seen Kupp come back, and then this value wouldn't be there because Kupp would have been just doing what he was doing before. But it's maybe at a lowered scale. I can't imagine looking at 22.4 points per game in the exact same situation and going, no, I'm good.
Kyle checking in.
What up, Kyle?
Kyle's coming in at the right time. Kyle, I don't know if you've heard, but Tom is making a hell of a case for Cooper Kupp as a buy, particularly at cost. So you'll like that, because we had that conversation about what do you do with that tier of, like, 29, 30 year old productive wide receivers do you put them before or after some of these younger guys? Kyle has like Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp and Diggs and Tyreek Hill higher above guys like Garrett Wilson, Olave, and et cetera. I kind of have them switched.
I would still prefer Garrett Wilson. I would still prefer Chris Olave if I'm doing a startup. That is true. But if you're telling me that I can pay wide receiver 2 prices, and I'm kind of with Kyle as well, where I am team old wide receiver. I was buying DeAndre Hopkins when he was suspended. I will buy Tyreek Hill at his price. We're doing a trade video that's coming out early in the week for trades from the Full Tilt Discord where we talk about Tyreek Hill. Trading JMO in a 108 for a Tyreek Hill. Absolutely, I'll do that. Smash that in a minute because there's only a few game-breaking wide receivers. You can already have your Garrett Wilsons and your Chris Olaves and your DK Metcalfs and pay way less than you should have to pay for a potential wide receiver 1, 2, 3 in Dynasty. It's nuts to me that weekly this guy does nothing but ball out. 2020 was a little bit of a blip, right? In 15 games, he was only wide receiver 30, but people were like, oh, he only broke out in 2021. Nope. 2019, wide receiver 7 in points per game. 2018, he was wide receiver 15 in points per game. Yeah. He's just good. Yeah. He's just good. Elite even.
I'm sorry. I want to get you. Well, you are home, but we got to get to the startup, and we started a few minutes late, so I don't want to. I mean, I could do this for 5 hours, but I don't think you want to.
Hey, man, I'm here for as long as you want me to be. All right. As long as the people don't turn us off because I'm here.
You asked me to add a bonus wide receiver to your top 5, and I did a complete cop out. My bonus wide receiver is whoever you value higher than your league does or the other manager does among a giant swath of wide receivers that I have pretty even. So among those wide receivers are, guys like Burks, Pittman, Godwin, London, Ayuk, DJ Moore, Pickens, Judy. We talked about Dotson, Kirk, McLaurin, and Christian Watson. And of the guys on that list, I identified a few that I seem to be above consensus on: JMO, Debo, Burks, Godwin, and Christian Kirk. And the thing is, if I can get one of those other guys plus a little bit for a guy that I have pretty even, why not do it? Anybody in there that's like a hell no or anything you want to say about that kind of bunch of guys that I have pretty close together?
Sure. So aside from the like elite potential top 5 wide receivers like weekly, and I would even put like a Calvin Ridley in there as well because I still think he's a value. All of those guys are kind of in one jumbled mess to me. So for me, when I'm looking at a list like this where I see guys like Debo, I don't want to roster Debo or Godwin. I love Kirk, but I will take the second. I want rookie wide receivers, sophomore wide receivers, or draft picks. And if I'm not getting that, then I want discount Cooper Kupp. I want discount DeAndre Hopkins, discount Diggs, discount Hill, and then I'll fill in with these year 2 guys to give me dynasty depth. So when I'm looking at a list like this, I'm not even looking at Debo. I'm not looking at Pittman. I'm not looking at Ayuk. I'm not looking at DJ Moore, who I love, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin. Get out of my way. Like, just get out of here. Bateman, none of these guys. I want the sophomores and the rookies or those elite old guys if they're below cost. And if they're not
you're
below
skipping
cost,
over essentially this whole tier, and maybe this is where you're taking the dreaded running backs because you haven't taken them in the first few rounds.
I mean, I'll just look for the sophomore wide receiver, right? So if you're going to tell me that I can choose from Treylon Burks, Debo Samuel, or I don't know running backs, Austin Eckler, I'll just take Burks because he's a second-year wide receiver. Maybe he's a wide receiver 2 moving forward, but we know that he's going to accrue value. And if I'm doing a startup and I'm looking at it that way, I want the player that's going to accrue value and give me the most opportunity to stay liquid and have my dynasty roster accrue value to put me in a position where I can go and get Cooper Kupp, I can go and get Traylon. I can move a guy like Traylon Burks with those ADPs keep going in their trajectories for Cooper Kupp.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I realize that I'm a contender, and I can get a little bit on top of that too. So I always want to stay fluid. I want to avoid the guys like Godwin unless their price becomes really, 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 really good.
Yeah, there's concern there for sure. Injuries and Brady gone, and yeah.
But he's a trade candidate and he's a cut candidate, which I love both of those things for him. But again, I just rather the second-year wide receivers. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking about a bunch of players who their range of outcomes are probably wide receiver 2s, maybe even wide receiver 3s with wide receiver 2 upside, which I hate saying, but it's necessary. These guys' value possibilities are more likely to go up than these other guys, and that's what I want. So even against those dreaded running backs that I avoid so much, no, I'll just take the sophomore and rookie picks, and that's that. I mean, that's how I want to build my dynasty roster. But again, when we're talking about wide receivers to buy, chances are it's in a value that's been existing for a while. There's already an established market. You know who these guys are that will move, guys who won't. So it's very micro market focused, but very, very movable. So when, especially when you ask me about these extra guys, this giant compilation of just mishmashed wide receiver 2s. I mean, I'll just take the sophomores, because you could even identify Chris Godwin as problematic this year. Like, without talking about his injury, we're talking about a team that passed at a super high rate, and like there's little pieces of data that can help you identify him as not really being the wide receiver that people are already moving up in the top 10 at the end of the first year with Brady. And I was selling because there were data-driven warning signs that could tell you that he was not him. So I'm always just going to take the player more likely to accrue the most value, especially in a startup situation that you have laid out here.
That's a great target. That's a good rule. The person who's going to accrue value. Real quick, you're a Ravens fan.
Yes.
Assuming they either tag or pay Lamar, does the new OC do anything for Bateman's value at all?
I mean, the only person that can help Bateman's value is Bateman. I think it doesn't matter what the OC is. I mean, they have to bring more guys in. They have to. I've seen everything from Quentin Johnston to Dobbs to Addison to you name every wide receiver. Zay Flowers, all those guys. They're definitely going to draft somebody. They don't have a second round pick. If they're going to do it, they're going to have to do it early. That spells bad news bears for Bateman, right? He's had multiple injured years, and he's been good on those limited targets, but I don't know if the new OC is going to do him any favors in regards to that, because, well, we've never seen him in this offense. We've never seen them operating. So I think with the offensive coordinator, what he's going to do is he's not going to do super dumb stuff. Like we're going to look at an offensive coordinator that doesn't have Patrick Ricard leading your team in targets at halftime. You know what I mean? So in that regard, we're going to see a little bit more of a normal run offense. What happens after that is really up to kind of history, because receivers that struggle like he has with health and then production over the first couple of years don't just break out of nowhere. So I think if they bring in a wide receiver, like a first round wide receiver, nah. I'm out on Bateman. I've been out on Bateman. I don't have much hope for his awesome comeback, but a late 2, he's the type of player that I would pay for that. But I'd be looking to jump off no matter what with this guy. And I think what Kyle says, I think Jackson returning will be a much bigger factor for Bateman's success than whoever the OC is. I agree for that, but the OC is the one going to be deciding whether or not Bateman plays inside, outside. And again, if they actually run things like wide receiver screens when they're all out blitzed, do they run more than just a drag route across the middle of the field? Do they run a double move more than once a game? Like these are the things that I expect a good coach to do. But what did I say earlier? I never plan for rational coaching.
That's right.
So I won't do that with Bateman now. I'm going to take the data that I have. And my data tells me run. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run.
One guy that Kyle has, sort of with Cup, and I have ranked closely with Cup, similar age, similar in that, they're target monsters and good points per game, but missing a quarterback right now. What do you think about Davante Adams?
I think he smashes with whoever it is. Like they bring Garoppolo in, smash. You bring, hell, I think he'd smash with Baker. I don't think there's anyone that Davante Adams could play with that would force me off of him. The price is probably still going to force me off of him. Like he's going after Cooper Kupp, which I really like. Oh my gosh, if I'm looking at the bulletproof one, this got updated a little bit recently. I mean, I'm smashing Davante Adams at this rate. We're talking about a guy, I would take Drake London over him. I would take DK Metcalf over him for sure. Diggs, Olave, Higgins. But he's the type of player that I would trade T. Higgins for Davante Adams if I could get anything on top. Like he's that kind of player. So I don't really care about the quarterback there. I care about the player. He earns targets. He's not just good, he's great. And again, you can stack your team with Amon-Ra, Cooper Kupp, and Davante Adams, and just you're good. You're just you're more than okay.
That's a pants off party in PPR.
100%. And that's what you're looking for. This is also definitely the time of year where stuff like this happens. Where these value of these older wide receivers just get completely run into the ground. Anyone that has any bit of age on them is just getting run into the ground. And I definitely want to buy all of them. So I'm with Kyle in that regard when it comes to Davante Adams, Tyreek Hill, right? The Diggs, the Kupp. I love all that. I would be trading guys like Metcalf, Higgins, Pittman, all those kind of tweener wide receiver ones for those guys plus in a minute, and even straight up in most cases. So yeah, definitely a buy for me.
Interesting. Okay.
Because again, we're talking about elite production. The market's getting a little bit lower on him, and I definitely think he should be a wide receiver, a third to second round pick, but he's not going to be because of his age, and he's going to give you that production. So, that's it for me. I love those guys at that price, and that's how we identify that as a market buy.
All right. Well, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review on the Going for Two live podcast feed. The audio, if you're watching here on YouTube, either live or later on, please subscribe to the channel. Click thumbs up on the video, and even click the bell to get the notifications. We're going to land the plane here. Really want to thank Tom for spending time with us tonight, and subbing for Josh, who believe will be back next week, barring anything unforeseen. Plug. Tom, where can we find you and your work?
So once again, all over the place. I'm everywhere. I'm loud. I'm obnoxious. You're going to see it. Full Tilt puts out just so much content on a regular basis. There's, if you just find my name at Thomas Tipple FF, or like I have at the bottom here at Dynasty Tilt, you're going to find our content. You can go to YouTube. That helps a lot. At 500 subscribers, we're doing a huge custom, this bad boy championship belt giveaway, all customized with Full Tilt. We're doing that at 500 subscribers. You're going to want to go and do that. We'll be talking about that as we go. Lots of fun stuff. I mean, Murderer's Row of guests coming up. Once we get back into full swing, just go and hit that, man. And I've enjoyed this conversation. We're two different Dynasty players. We're two different methodologies. We're two different personalities. And I feel like it is important to sit across, or I guess in this case, beside somebody else that has a completely different perspective than you, and get an understanding of how and why they operate the way that they do. Because you cannot play fantasy football with the same people taking the same players the same way and learn and grow. Challenge yourselves. If I were to walk away from this episode saying one thing, challenge yourselves and play with players you've never played with before this offseason, please.
Thanks. I really appreciate that, because as I've told you, talking with you and Jacob and other folks that are a little bit more toward, I don't know, I don't want to oversimplify it with the team nerd, but a little more of the data driven advanced stats and analytics, that sort of thing. Value based drafting is like that sort of genre, that vibe, right? I'm sprinkling more of that into how I look at things, and it's definitely pushed my thinking. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ffjunkie_. Wednesday nights, I record an audio-only podcast called Dynasty Fever Pod, and it drops on Thursdays at Dynasty Fever Pod on Twitter. Obviously, you can catch me here every Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Also going for 2.com, Dynasty rankings, rookie rankings, and also occasional articles here and there. Pushed out a few prospect profiles recently. Going to be working on some more as we get into rookie season. Going for 2 has so much content for you. A podcast just about every night of the week. As I said, website articles. When you go to the website, in the little bottom right-hand corner, purple thing for the Discord, join the Discord. It's free. Lots of channels. It's on and popping. That's a wrap. Thanks for being with us.
Go Irish.
All right.